Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Right, so a good one. Round number 3 of the 2025 BRSCC Clapham North Winter eSports Series is underway here tonight. We're heading to one of the most legendary tracks in the UK, the Brands Hatch GP circuit. We're effectively getting towards the halfway point in the season. We'll cross it throughout this evening, of course. 3 more races in the BMW M2CS racing car and another magnificent packed field in store once more. 36 drivers as it was at Donington Park. It's set to be 3 more exceptional 15-minute races of full-on esports action. Good evening, everybody. Scott Woodwist here, back in the commentary box after my Middle Eastern adventures a couple of weeks ago. But first of all, before we do anything else, I have to say a massive thank you, whether he's watching or not, to my very good friend and fellow commentator Andy McHugh. A great job from him in what was 3 very entertaining races last time out at Donington Park, both in the wet and in the dry. Our first ever wet race that we had in BRSCC eSports history. Lots of great racing there, and victories last time out for both Matt Kendall and James Dennison. In fact, going into this weekend and this evening's racing, James Dennison still leads the points from Matt Kendall, but the gap has increased, but only by 1 point. It's gone from 1 to 2 points, and he leads on 302 by 300. This is after taking into account any drop scores, because we have now had our first 6 rounds completed, so we are now starting to factor in drops as a result of that. And it is going to be very interesting to see how this evening's racing plays out, particularly on such a legendary circuit as Brands Hatch. This has been the home of the British Grand Prix. It is the current home of top-line racing in British Superbikes, TCC, and everything else on top of that. It really is an excellent place to go racing. We're going to go onto an onboard lap here as we get set for qualifying to be underway. We're on board with none other than Will Blackwell Chambers. We're headed down the hill of Paddock Hill Bend and up towards the top through Druids. It's either V off the corner or a tight apex all the way through, breaking a straight line, and then touched about 70 miles an hour on the apex in 3rd gear. Be careful not to run too wide over those curbs, otherwise you can start to rack up those penalty points on those tracks, which could potentially lead you with a disqualification. Here they turn left off of Surtees, and now they start to head towards Pilgrim's Drop, Hawthorns and Westfield as they charge onto the GP loop. This is where you had so many legendary battles in the past with the British and European Grand Prix. We've had sports cars here, of course British touring cars, world touring cars, also the home of course of the UK round of the Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS, and the likes of British Superbikes, British GT and more race on this circuit. We come out through Westfield towards Sheen Curve, a blind apex here. You flick over the curb, then back to the right-hand side towards Stirling's, flick it down from 4th to about a gear, about 75, 80 miles an hour on the apex, hover over the curb on the exit, and then you charge your way up the straight towards the right-hander at McLaren and Clearways, under the bridge, brake from 120 to about, once again, 80 miles an hour, let the car drift out wide initially, bring it towards the inside of the circuit, and hug the inside line all the way to the line. That's where you complete a lap to try and get the best possible lap time. So lap times we were expecting top lap times to be somewhere in the high 1 minute 33s, and that's exactly what we've got, because championship leader James Dennison, as you see on the screen here, his livery hasn't quite loaded into the system just yet. He's not in his usual purple and yellow uniforms we had before. He is currently fastest in the session, 1 minute 33.814, but only just by about 0.03 of a second from his fastest driver, his main rival Matt Kendall, in second quickest for the top of the Clapham North cars. An impressive time so far, third quickest for Thomas Merritt for T12 eSports. He's one of our resident Fiesta Junior drivers. Excellent job from him. And Jack Noller, who made his first appearance in the championship last time out at Donington Park and got himself a podium, is up there in 4th quickest. You mentioned looking down the rest of the field as the liveries are just about loading in, giving a bit of a reset to try and get some of the usual liveries back on the screen. And looking down the order, we've got a couple of drivers that are making their debuts tonight, one of which I can see definitely is the Junior champion himself in car 272. That's Jensen O'Neill going, 23rd fastest for him, son of Jamie going, boss of Rennsport Racing. There is Jensen in the rather uniquely liveried Haribo sponsored car. And he'll be looking to try and make an impact here tonight, particularly as he is, as I mentioned, the champion of the Fiesta Juniors last year for the Mark 6. He is also pretty handy behind the wheel of a sim motor racing car. They come across the line and see if he can get a little bit higher up the order. He's chasing a car sponsored by Cherry Coke, by the looks of it. Can't quite make out who that is. It's no sign on the number there for a second, but we'll head up towards Rhodes as qualifying continues. With a circuit with 36 cars on the track, traffic is going to be at an absolute premium, particularly when trying to find space and trying to find room to get a quick lap in. The car that's chasing him actually is Peter Ennis, who has changed his livery. He has been running with the Barney the Dinosaur livery, but he has now changed to Cherry Coke instead. It's some kind of an homage to the Australian BMWs that ran with the likes of Craig Baird and David Brabham and co. Or Morris in Super Touring in Australia. Qualifying continues on. Dennison has slightly bettered his best lap of the session. There is Jack Noller. He's out in his proper livery. He was in an all-red car last time by, but he now is in the same uniform as Luke Pullen's car, in the wonderfully titled team of Lukey P's eSports Team of Dreams and Wonder, which I know amused a certain Andy McEwen very much when he was reading that last week. But Jack, of course, looking to make an instant impact where he can, considering he was very strong at Donington Park. Currently sits, as I mentioned, in 4th fastest. His teammate Luke Pullen back in 13th. The two Lukey P's eSports team machines inside the top 15, but it's Jack that's getting a better handle of this BMW M2CS racing car a little bit better. For those who haven't seen the format of the sports events, we have 3 15-minute races. Qualifying sets the grid for race number 1. The finishing order sets the grid for race 2. So if you win, you score pole position. Second place gets you the front row, etc. And then for race 3, it is the results of race 2, only with the top 10 reversed. So if you finish in 10th, you will automatically start on pole for race number 3 of the evening. When Jack Noller comes under the bridge with Clearways and McLaren and powers his way through straight through Clark Curve and onto the Brabham Straight. And see if he can improve at all on this one. Looking at sectors, no green sectors at all. There is a green sector 3 for James Dennison, so that's his fastest fastest first sector of the session. Just looking through the timing screen on the digital screen here. Actually was a personal best sector 1, but hasn't improved in any of the others just yet. 4 sectors being timed in this qualifying session tonight. Someone going for a loop around behind Jack Noller there. 2 cars, in fact, are going for a loop. Even though it's bone dry out there tonight compared to the rather soaking wet conditions that we had for race 3 at Donington, some drivers are still finding it a little bit tough. And it was, in fact, Rob Boston. So it's good to see the man behind Rob Boston Racing having his first go in eSports and looping it around in front of, looks like a Jimmy Broadbent Bilstein livery car. Of course, there are more than just Jimmy Broadbent in that car that's driven it, like the Super GT and Misha Chowderon. Session heading towards its conclusion, about 2.5 minutes left to go. Still James Dennison fastest from Matt Kendall in second quickest, Thomas Merritt third. Fourth quickest for Jack Noller, and then fifth for Nathan J. Williams, who has been quite an impressive young driver to join the championship. Has done well in his first couple of outings already. Will Blackwell Chambers sixth quickest, Isaac Doble seventh, Douglas in eighth. He's in one of the two Sim 1 Motorsport liveried cars. He's being driver mentored and coached by Lee Britton. And we have Chris Etheridge in the hashtag Blessed car. Good to see Chris up in the top 10 in his car that pays an homage to the 1992 Vickley Racing BMWs. And John Pethick Racing in his very simple blue livery with the white offset stripes. He is currently in 10th fastest. A couple of drivers I expect to be a little bit higher up compared to where they were the first couple of events. Luke Pullen 13th fastest. Joe Moss is in 12th for Flat Cup Motorsport. Harry Barker is the best of the Team Northbrook Racing cars because his teammate, who doesn't appear to be here tonight, in fact, but if he is going to be here, he hasn't set a time just yet. Can't see Richard yet, but Harry Barker, the sole Northbrook Racing representative, 11th quickest at the moment. Pete Smith, who was on the reverse grid pole for Navarra, is back in 15th place. Tom Wanhemius also a little bit further back than he would like to be, back in 16th, and he was hovering around the top 10 in the last couple of races at Donington. There is Tom. Go on board with him, chasing another of the cars on track. Even though it is quite a longer lap on the GP circuit, as I mentioned, find a gap in qualifying is not the easiest thing in times, and thankfully that spin was happening in front of Tom, way out of his way rather than right in his path, and he's thankfully had his own spin out of Tom's line of sight on the racing line. Tom continues on. He's just about get enough time to complete a lap, although the session tends to end quite abruptly in iRacing, so you might not see him complete the lap, but he will at least try and push on. It isn't a personal best for him in terms of sectors. On Pethick has gone pretty quickly, and Matt Kendall's also improved sectors 3 and 4 on the last lap that he's completed. He stays second, and the gap is about just over a tenth of a second between the two of them. As Monhemius turns his way out through Stirling, and in fact I think he's giving up the session because he knows that the session has completed at 20 minutes. That means that the grid is just about set for our first of 3 races around the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. We get ready to rumble here at Brands Hatch. The grandstands are filled up, and we are getting ready to go tonight. It should be a very interesting first few corners, particularly into Paddock Hill Bend. We've got that large gravel trap on the left-hand side, but hopefully James Dennison will be hoping to stay out of it from pole position. So the championship leader starts on pole for race number 1. He is on alongside his main rival, Matt Kendall, only separated by just over a tenth in qualifying. Thomas Merritt with a very strong third fastest, with Jack Noller alongside him on the second row. Nathan J. Williams, an impressive 5th fastest, ahead of Will Blackwell Chambers in 6th. Then Isaac Doble back in 7th with Benji Douglas alongside him in 8th, and Chris Etheridge and John Pethick round out the top 10. Harry Barker and Joe Moss then come next, Northbrook Racing and Flat Cat Racing respectively. Luke Pullen is 13th alongside Ben Williams, MG Metro Cup racer. Pete Smith and Tom Wanhemius start on row 8 ahead of Keith Dalton and Neil Chisnell, with the top 20 rounded up by Lewis Turkington, son of 4-time BTCC champion Colin, and Nick Ramsey Goff for Morwen Motorsport. Then it's Jonathan Berry and Mark Blunt ahead of Jensen O'Neill Going, making his eSports debut in 23rd alongside Daniel Crisp for Boston College Racing. And still we scroll through the grid with Paul Donningham and Josh Jackson. Then it's Aaron Beattie, not Siobhan, but Aaron Beattie and James Roberts, Dan Gamble and Carl Pilkington, Anthony Lindley and Jamie Peters-Ennis, Bobby Holmes and Lee Britton way back in 34. He had a terrible qualifying at Donington Park, so expect him to charge through from row 17. And right at the back of the grid, Rob Boston and Max Haller, who is one of our new Fiesta Juniors for 2025. He's 36th and last but certainly not least on the grid. So waiting for 5 red lights at the top of the screen, and after the wet and wild action at Donington Park, comes to do it all over again at Brands Hatch. 5 red lights, they go out, and race number 1 of the Clapham North BRSCC Winter Esports event at Brands Hatch is go, and from pole it is James Dennison, who will sweep into Paddock Hill Bend with the lead. Is in second place. Now I've got my fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything crossed that they get through Paddock Hill Bend safely. They just about have, out through Druids now. They're 2 and 3 abreast. That's usually a sign for trouble, but it says optimistically they've all got through just about okay. I think there was one car spinning to the infield. There was. That looks like Jamie Peters-Ennis. He's hit trouble before the race even really began. Looks as though 35 of the 36 strong field have reached Surtees without any dramas, thankfully. So now they head off out of Surtees and now towards Pilgrim's Drop, down the hill towards Hawthorns for the first time, under the bridge. It's Dennison who leads, Kendall second, Merritt third, then Williams fourth, Nola, Doble, who's battling away with Bull Blackman Chambers. Doble tries to brave it out around the outside in towards Hawthorns. Wiggle from Blackman Chambers, who is trying to stand his ground as they're turning through Westfield. Now just behind him now, in a new livery in fact, is Benji Douglas Racing, and that rather menacing black and grey livery with BDR alongside in red lettering. There it is. Position for Benji. Look at the snake. They're properly line astern down towards Sterling's. I'm trying to make moves. There's a couple of cars that have a couple of pieces of trim further back. One car I think he's possibly struggling is Jonathan Berry, I think, in car 96. Yep, so the white and maroon coloured car is back down in 28th and battling away with Bobby Holmes, and to Rob Boston from the back of the grid. Of lap number 1, Dennison leads him into Paddock Hill Bend again, and Kendall is kind of repeating what happened at Navarra, where he was chasing all the time, but he won't do it like that as Kendall goes off the road, bounces off the tyres on the approach to Druids, and the man second in the points has made a grave mistake, not quite out of the race, but he's dropped down to 5th, given a free pass to Thomas Merritt, Nathan Williams and Jack Noller. He just caught a touch of oversteer, the car snapped. As he ran through the gravel, he couldn't keep it off the tyres. May have suffered very light damage, but he'll carry on regardless. Take a look at the replay. This is on board with Kendall, so down towards Paddock Hill Bend. Has to go to the racing line because there, Dennison parking right on the apex. Just as he touches the curb, it just gets the car loose. He tries to steer away from the tyres, but he has to bounce off them. The shake of the car to get off some of the gravel, and he's down to 5th. Early drama then for Matt Kendall. He's rejoined, of course, 4 tenths ahead of his teammate. The Clapham North cars are 5th and 6th, although I just saw at the bottom of the shot Kendall was trying to strong arm his way past Jack Noller for P4, and now with his teammate in tandem, 2 Clapham North cars are running as a pair, trying to run away past Noller here as they come through Stirling for the second time, onto the short straight under the bridge towards McLaren and Clearways for the second time. James Dennison now enjoys an 8 tenths of a second gap, and particularly when there's only 15 races in this series, there are drop scores too. Yes, you can drop your 3 worst results, but it's still a series where every single point really has to count, because ultimately you have to score as much as you can. The higher you're scoring, yes, the more points that you drop in the end, but the higher you can score, the better position it puts you in towards the end of the season. Matt Kendall certainly knows that. He just about runs Jack Noller out of room, and that in fact opens the door for Will Blackwell Chambers. Here's the view back from Kendall. Noller says, I don't quite think you're going to let both the Clapham North cars through. He runs wide on the exit of Graham Hill Bend. Blackwell Chambers doesn't have enough punch off the corner to drag himself alongside. By the time they get to the end of the short straight at Surtees, Noller is opening the door a little bit on corner exit, and he's trying to just hold him off as much as he can. The all-grey car behind is still Isaac Doble in 7th place. Or just looking around, just putting himself into Blackwell Chambers' wing mirrors. The cars that are getting away now in this clearer air are certainly enjoying better fortunes than those stuck with each other, particularly these two. And Berry on the recovery trail side by side with James Roberts in that rather striking looking Rocket liveried number 9 BMW, and just gets switched back on the exit. Berry moves through past him at Hawthorns. There's enough momentum for Roberts to get back in line before he goes to Westfield. Touch over the curb, they're side by side ahead of him between, looks like that is Jamie Peters-Ennis and Steve Lindley. Well, in the background, James Roberts, I've put the commentator's curse on him because number 9 BMW went spearing off into the barrier. Russell Stanley Lindley, and they come together on the exit, both of them off into the barriers. Well, that was unfortunate. He'll get going again, but it was a rather strange sequence of events, but both of them seem to have gone tumbling back down the timing screen. That is their first race at least, taking a rather heavy nosedive. It's Rob Boston, who starts at the back of the grid. A replay of what happened between these two incidents. So the first incident in the background is there. James Roberts losing it as he exits out of Sheen Curve. Just there, Lindley gets it loose. As he rejoins again, that might just be momentum coming back on the circuit. Maybe a little bit of netcode involved in that potentially, but aside from that, it was it's one for the stewards to look at. There's the move from Lindley. Roberts goes off in the background, and Lindley runs wide. Is already a little bit loose. He kind of touches the grass twice and gets loose 2 times, and it's that second time when he goes to rejoin that just sees him tap the rear end of Peter Dennis's car, and away he goes. Further up the field, where it's a little bit quieter, it's Mark Blunt and Nick Ramsey-Goff. He's currently sat at the moment in, I think, about 15th place. No, this is further down, in fact, because Mark Blunt is now under threat from. That is Josh Jackson that's gone through, and just ahead of him in 21st place is Nick Ramsey-Goff in the Driven Minds liveried machine. This is interesting. Up at the front of the field, James Dennison is being challenged, but it's not by Matt Kendall. It's in fact by Thomas Merritt, the BRSCC Fiesta Junior driver, putting the pressure on and who you most regularly see in BRSCC circles in the Super Sport Endurance Cup at the wheel of a Mazda MX-5. His teammate, Pete Smith, usually runs not just there, but also in the MX-5 Clubman Championship. Dennison, who has 3 wins out of 6 races to his name so far this season, looking to make it 4 from 7, but not quite being able to shake off Merritt, who was quick in qualifying, and he was fastest for a period of time before Dennison managed to put in fastest time of the session to snatch pole. Be interested to see how Merritt decides to mount an attack, if he's got any opportunity to try and squeeze past at all. And further back, you can see Nathan Williams up in 3rd ahead of Matt Kendall. So Kendall, of course, has now dropped Noller, who holds 5th position. Williams now finding himself in a slightly higher position than he may have been previously, but Williams certainly making the most of his opportunity to be up there in a potential podium place. He has got to hold off the rather feisty Clapham North machine of Matt Kendall for that position, and Kendall, I think, knows that if he can get past Williams, he's got just about half the race left to go after the top 2. The harder the top 2 fight each other, they come up the short straight. Looking a bit back at Chris Etheridge, who is putting the pressure on Benji Douglas. And again, good to see Chris Etheridge, who is a bit of an endurance specialist in BRSCC circles. Mainly he races in the C1 Endurance Series, but he's also in the mix with the Super Sport Endurance Cup. I think he's raced before in a BMW M3, so he's no stranger to the Bavarian mark. And as these two hail each other for 8th and 9th position, see the background there, Joe Moss in P10 in the place. Wiggle on the exit as he got over the curb through Paddock Hill Bend. Everyone's now started just to settle in now into the race now, not taking too many risks. They're trying to be a little bit more calculated and find their way through. And the group in front are closing up a little bit. We see Etheridge there, who has the opportunity. Douglas opens the door on exit. And now as they go side by side off of Surtees, they're going to sprint down the hill under the bridge towards Pilgrim's Drop. Etheridge now possibly might be brave enough to go round the outside if Douglas gives him the space, but Douglas might just show him the door here as they go through. Into Hawthorns we go, and Douglas takes the tighter line. He does show respect to Etheridge on the outside. Again, track position goes the way of young Benji, then runs wide over the curb. Etheridge tries to come through, and Joe Moss tries to make it 3 abreast on the approach towards Sheen. That's not quite going to work. Etheridge does find his way through. He's now up into 8th position. And there's a bit of a stack-up happening here, because Benji Douglas has now got Joe Moss, John Pethick and Harry Barker just behind him here. And this is a battle that's now going on between them for 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th. And Luke Pullen's not too far away either there, as either is John Pethick. Out through Clearways and Clark Curve they go. It's 6-pack battling over 7th, 8th position. That's the line they go back into towards Paddock Hill Bend. And touch wood, I don't want to put the commentator's curse on it, but it has been a relatively clean first race tonight. Everyone's minded their P's and Q's pretty well. We didn't really have any dramas at the start. Was the little incident we had between Steve Lindley and Jamie Peters-Ennis, but apart from that, it's been relatively trouble-free. So I have to say, kudos to everyone on track for keeping it clean and tidy, particularly on such a narrow circuit like Brands Hatch. Fast and it's flowing, but nonetheless, it's still a challenging circuit. All those who are in there too. It's been an entertaining watch, the battle for 8th and 9th. We switch back to our race leaders, who are at Hawthorns, now on their 7th lap of the race, and Dennison's still being tailed heavily by Thomas Merritt. you almost don't know where to look because the next group behind are quite tight together. 3rd down to 7th are nose to tail. They are. This is now Kendall, who has got up to 3rd place. So whilst we're watching the battle for 9th, Kendall has slipped through into 3rd. And that now puts him with a chance to try and catch up to the cars ahead. But look at last lap times, he was 3/10 slower at least than the 2 cars ahead of him. He's going to have to start using some of the clear air to full advantage and close that gap in as much as possible. So you've got 3 separate groups here developing. This is the 3rd group, which also involves Ben Williams, G Metro Cup racer. He's battling away in the number 75 machine with Pete Smith in the 2nd of the Bromley racing cars. And one Hemius, who had a couple of top 10s in this championship, was quite strong at Donington Park. Didn't quite have the right qualifying form earlier on. Tries to go diving up the inside Paddock Hill bend, but has to sit back, and now we ride on board. He gets a perfect view of the 2 cars scrapping in front, Pete Smith and Ben Williams. Williams opens the door, and I spoke too soon with the driving, didn't I? Because Tom Hemius, unfortunately, has just tapped the rear of Ben Williams, and round he goes. Not quite sure Ben will appreciate that. I don't see any malice in that at all. It was simply just instant between 2 cars. This is the replay view from up above. As they go under brakes, when Hemius takes that wider approach, Williams outbrakes himself. Hemius is just there on his right rear quarter. The 2 cars come together. Hemius continues whilst Williams now finds himself further down the order. He's rejoined back in 24th position. About 2/3 of the way down the field. A lot of work to do. There he is. He's on the back of Jonathan Berry here for 23rd to try and reclaim the place. Go into the closing stages. About 2.5 minutes left in this race of the night, and Jonathan Berry is having to possibly watch Ben Williams sail around the outside. Thankfully, Privateer with the Mission R livery on the side has held off MG Metro Cup man. Machine curve. Fantastically fast right-hander. To watch cars flow through there one after the other, particularly this group of cars. Jack Noller comes under threat from fellow Mazda MX-5 driver Will Blackwell-Chambers. This is over 5th. 1 round wide ahead of them. That was either Kendall or Williams. And now Isaac Doble fancies a go at 6th position and the outside at Druids. Nothing doing for the Mr. who is going to be one of a few newcomers in Fiesta Juniors this year. Nice to see some of the junior drivers mixing with the elder experienced senior drivers in the field. A mix of talent and experience and levels of racing in this eSports series. Great to bring so many BRSCC drivers together in one series. Many you can do it in, particularly in real life, but in the sim, you can bring them all into one car on some of the best circuits in the UK. Really see who is the best, who can invest in these cars in a proper one-make series. The playing field is particularly level. This battle continues between Kendall and Williams. Let's switch back to our leaders. Gap of stage static at around about 4, maybe 5/10, so half a second or so between them. Dennison hasn't looked as though he's really flinched from the lead since he took it from the start in pole position. The early threat from Kendall, but after he made the mistake exiting Paddock Hill Bend as he ran through the gravel, bounced off the tyres and dropped back to what was set 5th place at the time. Ross Merritt has stepped up. If he stays where he is, this will certainly put him on the front row for race 2. He starts there alongside Dennison. I wonder what kind of start he can pick up that will allow him to maybe even challenge for the lead in these opening corners. So we're on the last lap of the race now because we have around about 35 seconds of the race timer. So the timer will run out on this lap and then take the checkered flag next time by. Isaac Doble wants to get there in P6 ahead of Blackwell-Chambers and diving up the inside into Druids. He's done just that. Now, there might be a chance for the top 5, but he needs to try and latch onto the tail of Jack Noller quite quickly. Also got to be careful not to run too wide on the exit of some of those turns, particularly Graham Hill Bend. This was real-life Brands Hatch. He'd be letting off the pressure pads at the exit of the corner, whilst one T12 eSports car is chasing for the lead, the other one is getting into it for 17th place. That was Lewis Turkington battling with... I can't see who that was he was battling with. It looks like, I think, Jensen O'Neill going or Daniel Crisp, one of the two. And that is, I think it's Jensen O'Neill going he's had a little tangle with. Yes, it is. So, 2 more young talents. A little bit too close for comfort. We've also got Daniel Crisp on their tail as well. This is back to the scrap going on for 3rd, 4th and 5th. They haven't changed too much. the gap has slightly edged out on this final lap between the top two. James Dennison, who has really taken to this BMW pretty quickly, like the proverbial duck to water, now going to head through Clearways and McLaren for the final time, and despite challenges from Kendall and from Thomas Merritt, he will come across the line to make it 4 wins from the first 7 races, once again retaining the points lead. Dennison takes victory in race number 1 of the evening in the Clapham North BRSCC Winter eSports Series. It's victory for the Bromley Racing with Alba Studios man. Thomas Merritt with a very impressive 2nd place. Kendall picks up 3rd after his little mishap exiting Paddock Hill Bend. It's Nathan Williams and Jack Noller in the top 5. Isaac Doble takes 6th, Will Blackwell Chambers 7th. Jonathan Berry, in fact, had a really impressive run. It shows he's in 8th. Which, given the fact he was quite far down the order, if he is in fact 8th, that's very, very impressive. If he's managed to get up that high. It's then 9th place for Chris Etheridge and 10th for Benji Douglas as they come across the line. The rest of the field comes streaking through, but Dennison once again then taking the advantage and the points. That will certainly help him to edge out his lead a little further going into race number 2. Kendall was very good, quite literal damage control. I'm not quite sure that was quite appropriate post-race ethic from Bobby Holmes. But hopefully he doesn't do that in real life, otherwise he'd be a little bit more expensive. Anthony Lindley comes across the line after his little mishap with Peter Dennis earlier in the race, but he will come through in 32nd at the flag. And there goes Paul Dunningham across the line too in 33rd, the Classic VW man. You take the flag, I think he's the last car to be classified. So we quickly reset, and race number 2 will get underway very shortly. Remember, it's the results from race number 1 that sets the grid for race 2. So the grid that you'll see in front of me is not only the grid, but also the result from race number 1. So James Dennison, courtesy of his victory, does take pole position for race 2, with Thomas Merritt now starting alongside him on the front row. Matt Kendall will try and recover, from 3rd place with Nathan Williams alongside on row 2. Then Jack Noller and Isaac Doble, followed by Will Blackwell Chambers and Chris Etheridge. Then Benji Douglas and Joe Moss. So I think, I did think that Jonathan Berry was a little out of position, considering that he's now showcasing back in 33rd. So he might have possibly fast-towed back to the pits. Maybe that's the reason why I was a bit confused. So 9th place for Benji Douglas, 10th for Joe Moss, 11th place on the grid on row 6 goes to Ari Barker and John Pethick, then Luke Pullen and Pete Smith from Tom Won-Hemis and Neil Chisnell, then Jensen and Neil Going, Lewis Turkington, Daniel Crisp, Mark Blunt, Nick Ramsey-Goff, Joe Dalton, Josh Jackson, Keith Dalton, Ben Williams, James Roberts and Gamble, and the rest as we get set for race number 2. There's the rest of the grid down to Lee Britton and Max Hall at the back of the grid. And with 5 red lights, we're all set to go. The race is back underway. Dennison again repeats his trick from race 1, but Merritt tries to squeeze up the inside with a better start from the front row. Gets boxed out by the points leader. And that's Nathan Williams getting sideways as he goes wide on the exit. Paddock Hill Bend. Does he keep himself out of trouble? No, he's been tagged by one of the Fiona Schnitzer liveried cars. A couple of cars hitting drivers, particularly Nathan Williams. They've all got through Druids okay at this point. Now to Graham Bend. I spoke too soon. One on the wall I think is Nick Ramsey-Goff, and just sets off a chain reaction, I'm afraid. A few cars involved. Yeah, Nick Ramsey-Goff is one of them, sadly. The other one I think is, we can see them in the other. There's Bobby Holmes, I think, was involved in that. Jonathan Berry and Williams. There goes Bobby Holmes back over the grass. A few cars hitting a lot of strife. In fact, I think, unfortunately, Nick Ramsey-Goff has decided to be fast-towed back to the pits to get a quick repair. Back with the leaders up through Hawthorns for the first time, and Merritt, starting from P2, now has a real opportunity from the off to put the pressure on James Dennison, unless Kendall makes him crack under the pressure and he squeezes through as a 3rd place. Note, you're seeing Bobby Holmes at the top of the screen. Ignore that, he has just fast-towed to the pits, so he's showing him a lead, but that's just in terms of his pure track position, so when they come across the line, it will sort itself out. James Dennison is definitely leading to the end of lap number 1, exiting Surtees and in towards Clearways and McLaren for the first time as they come onto Clark Curve. Dennison maintaining his advantage here. Kendall, thankfully, if he can keep his nose out of trouble this time by Paddock Hill Bend on this race, hold on to 3rd and keep up the pursuit. Side by side for 9th place as Joe Moss has a look up the inside of Barker, makes the move. Barker will do well to try and go with him, but if he keeps the door open, this will only just invite Luke Pullen to try and squeeze through into the top 10. Barker tries him up, there's a little hip and shoulder between them. enough for Harry Barker to maintain momentum and track position. They're still side by side going through Graham Hill Bend. Pullen takes the very wide approach on the outside line. And again, a left-hander means that it's going to be Barker's advantage. Less Pullen has something to say about it. Pethick is now going to try and have a look up the inside and take advantage with a better run. So see here, Pullen's now boxed in because he has just in front of him Harry Barker. Pethick now to his left. Pethick now backs out to allow Pullen the space. It was the view we had there from Tom von Hemmis as they turn through Hawthorne's now corner for the second time. Here comes Pullen, muscling his way up the inside. Pulls himself level and through the time being on Harry Barker. He gets the switch back. Pullen runs wide. They now run 2 by 2 like Noah's Ark up towards Sheen Curve. It's Pullen and Barker once more. Barker goes through and they make contact. Off goes Barker straight into the barriers. And it was all looking so well until they came together. So Barker now has to do it all over again from quite deep in the field. And as they come up through the few corners, we're going to get a couple of replays here as to what happened right at the start of the race. We're going to look at Nick Ramsey-Goff's perspective. So there's the incident that Nathan Williams had. He got tagged by somebody. Now going towards Druids, it's a bit of a schmozzle in front. There's a few cars in the mix. There goes Ben Williams around the outside. And as Nick goes across, he gets into the path of Williams and into the barrier he goes. There's a separate incident behind which involved James Roberts. I'm afraid that was all their own making in some cases. And let's look back at the perspective of James Roberts, in fact, from that first corner. So here's James's onboard view. There goes Williams to the left. There's debris in front. His car's everywhere in front of him. Immediate car in front there is Anthony Lindley to his right. He's trying to stay out of it. And as they come back onto the road, the incident in front begins to happen. He's got nowhere to go. He taps the 33 car, which was Aaron Beattie. And again, just absolutely nowhere to go. It's quite an extraordinary close-up shot there from our iRacing camera. We'll wait and see. This is now a scrap going on for track position. This is now Mark Blunt and Lewis Turkington. They're also under threat from Keith Dalton and Josh Jackson, who's in one of the 2 Rexy liveried cars. In towards Hawthorne goes the quartet, and it's Mark Blunt in front, who is more used to front-wheel drive antics in a Ford Fiesta rather than rear-wheel drive in a BMW, but certainly letting his craft here very well. Jackson continues on. He's one of our regular City Car Cup runners. You've got ST150 Challenge, followed by Dalton, who's a regular in Mazdas. Lewis Turkington, who is a junior racer. Then you have Jackson in the number 27 machine. As now we see Dalton trying to make a move and trying to force Blunt offline. That might be the opportunity that he needs, because he did try to squeeze up the inside and get the undercut through Clark Curve. Momentum, but has to slot back in line and follow the toe all the way up towards Paddock Hill Bend once more. Under brakes. Oh, I think was that. Looked like it was Josh Jackson just nudging the back of Lewis Turkington's car. Either way, all stayed on the straight and narrow. Here comes Wilson with the run, because Blunt was wide exiting Paddock Hill Bend. By the time they head through Druids on corner exit, the BASF livery machine is up now into 16th position. Another place gained. The field inside the top 20. Back with our leaders, it's 3 for the lead, because we have Dennison, Merritt and Kendall together, separated by less than a second. They've pulled a couple of car lengths over Jack Noller in 4th, who in turn has Will Blackwell Chambers on his rear bumper. Doble in 6th, Benji Douglas 7th, and it's Chris Etheridge, Joe Moss and John Pethick in the top 10. And we have now Kendall in 3rd place still, after he took 2 very impressive victories in the dry conditions at Donington Park. And struggled a tiny bit in the wet, but still scored some solid enough points to remain just 2 points behind James Dennison when they came into tonight's action. Kendall knows all about BMWs, considering he is a regular in the BMW Compact Cup, or what was the BMW Compact Cup. That championship has now merged with the BMW 1 Series Super Cup to become the BMW Super Cup Championship for this year. So both 1 Series Super Cup cars and Compact Cup cars will run together in one championship, 2 separate classes. I'm certain, I'd like to think, that Matt will be on that grid to show us how it's done. At the back, we're watching this scrap between these 4 or 5 cars. One car on the comeback trail is Harry Barker after his off at Sheen Curve. He's now breaking them up a little bit, and indeed there looks like it's Josh Jackson, because he's now run way wide on the exit of Paddock, and he now not only lets both Blunt and Barker through, but it also invites Lewis Turkington to squeeze up the inside as they exit Ridson down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend. still advantage Jackson. Nothing really changing there. A little further ahead, a few places up the road. This is Pete Smith scrapping with Jensen O'Neill going and Dan Crisp. Now make the charge down Pilgrim's Drop, and they're just about touching wing mirrors. Now, Crisp has got nowhere to go here. He's boxed in with the 2 cars in front. They go side by side into Hawthorns. And O'Neill going takes the place into 13th position ahead of Pete Smith. And Crisp, who's representing the Boston College racing team that runs in the Student Motorsport Challenge, he quite fancies moving up a place in the top 15 too. As they come through, a little wide there for Jensen O'Neill going as he hits the grass, back in towards Sterling's once again. They have hit just about half distance in this second race. That was Harry Barker and Keith Dalton. All of a sudden, I think it was Anthony Lindley just reappears in front of them after that little mess up, unless it was them with Josh Jackson. It must have been Anthony Lindley, because Lindley was he's now behind his teammate, and Lindley was ahead in the similarly liveried sponsored car. Lindley, in fact, is struggling his way back to the pits. He's got to be careful. Turkington's also in the pit lane too. I think they're related for these 2 incidents for them, but both of them have headed to pit lane, so they'll be at least getting a fast repair back out on track. Lindley has, in fact, missed his pit box, so you're going to lose him even more time in the field. Let's look at the replay here and see how he got here. So this is Anthony Lindley going rather slowly. That's very weird. He then shortcuts the circuit to go on the Indy layout, rejoins the circuit. It will be just in front of this group of cars. As he comes through, just hold this just a second to see how this all plays out. So he's just cut through the circuit and gone back around. You'd have thought the reason he would have done that is to go back to pit lane, but he hasn't, so he's going to continue on. So this group of cars in front, so Lindley was in front there. That was, in fact, Keith Dalton. Sorry, not Keith Dalton, Josh Jackson, who ran wide. That's why it was slightly confusing that Anthony Lindley was a little further in front. Confusing, but I think he was possibly trying to recover back to the pits, but mystery of Anthony Lindley continues as he's now in pit lane getting whatever repairs he needs. So, coming up towards the final third of the race, and again, James Dennison leads, but not convincingly so. He's still being put under pressure by about half a second gap between himself and Thomas Merritt, and this time Merritt is having to defend from a full-strength Matt Kendall, who is not finding it easy to try and close in. However, Dennison did just run wide on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, and that might just give the incentive Merritt in this final third of the race to close in and have a look. This is the view Matt Kendall has, watching the top 2 in front as they turn through the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend. Now up through the gears again, up to 4th. The brakes down to 3rd. The car hang and swing its way through onto the GP loop. It's the curb on the exit. Shift at 4th. Revs build once again, up into 5th, under the bridge down Pilgrim's Drop. Kendall, if he can keep up the pressure, certainly knows that extra couple of points might make the difference come season end. He really has to keep on pressing and hope that at least one of the 2 cars in front makes a mistake. If he's going to hope for a mistake, he hopes for, I guess, more for Dennison than for Thomas Merritt, because Dennison is his main rival in the points right now. 2 points separating them coming into the event. And the fact that Kendall was 2 places back from Dennison, I think that gap might have just extended itself in my head to 6 points now between the top 2. The trio now heads its way back towards McLaren, Clearways and Clark Kerr. They've got a lapped car in front they're going to put a lap on. It might well be, I think, Bobby Holmes. Jamie Peter Dennis did change livery, so the Barney the Dinosaur liveried car, I think that's certainly going to be Bobby Holmes after his early mishaps. To level lap, they've completed so far 7 in this race, onto lap 8. Surprisingly, fastest lap of the race has gone to James Dennison with a lap, but I think it's even quicker his pole time from qualifying. So impressively, and Merritt going quicker than their efforts they scored to put them on the grid in race 1 in the first place. Is now Isaac Doble, who is continuing to chase the second of the Clapham North cars, 5th position. Blackwell Chambers in front of him. The other 3 cars in shot, Jack Noller in 6th, Benji Douglas in 7th, and Chris Etheridge, who I have to say is impressing me tonight here. He's had a decent qualifying, a top 10 result in race 1, he's holding his own in race 2. Strong stuff from the C1 and Supersport Endurance man. I have to say, genuinely, because I'm a 90s baby and a driver, someone who enjoys the Super Touring era, at least the early days of the Super Tourers, livery that I'm quite fond of too. He's even put, by the looks of it, I think it's supposed to be the Listerine dinosaur, but hashtag Bless suggests he might have put the motif of Lewis Hamilton on the bonnet, I think. Nonetheless, that fits with the hashtag Bless aesthetic. A rather smart tribute-based livery to go with it too as well. And we now ride on board with Chris Etheridge. This is the bumper cam on the BMW M2 CS Racing. The view you're seeing is the fight going on ahead for 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th. Only just ahead of them, not too far, is Bobby Holmes, I believe, because yeah, just in the distance you can see the top 3 in their own battle going through the top of Paddock Hill Bend. And there, in fact, again, with James Dennison for the 2nd time putting a wheel onto the dirt, exiting Paddock Hill Bend as they come up Halewood towards Druids. This now gives Thomas Merritt another sniff, another opportunity to close in and have a look for position. Running wide again, both ran pretty wide over the AstroTurf. The exit, there goes Holmes in the background going for a spin. That's him disposing of himself out of the way. That's one way to let the traffic pass. I have to say, Thomas Merritt now, this is possibly the closest he's ever been so far tonight. He is right on the rear wing, less than 2/10 in the slipstream. Does he dare go for a move? He's running out of time. He's only got about roughly, I'd say, a lap and a half to go. And Thomas Merritt will be right on board with here in car 12. Is he going to make it the lead here for T12 Esports? He looks to the outside. He'll look for that undercut through the right-hander at Westfield. This one runs wide over the curve, but he has the track position he needs. He holds steady. You can't really pass him towards Sheen Curve. Merritt doesn't try. Now we hang out the side of a number 12 car as we watch purple and yellow machine of Dennison in front. We switch to a left-hand side camera inside at Stirling. Back up through the gears again. Another back marker moving out of the way. That's smart driving from them. Well done. They will go on to the last lap of the race here. Thomas Merritt is as feisty as he's ever been. Now onto the pit straight. This is the chance he needs here. Will he go inside or outside to make a move for position? He's at 125 miles an hour in 5th gear. Under brakes in towards Paddock Hill Bend. That undercut surely has to come here. Goes from one side to the other. Wants to put himself alongside. Listen again wide over the curb, but again goes defensive. He doesn't trust the racing line because he knows that Merritt will find any gap possible to squeeze through and make the pass. And for Druids, back down towards Graham Hill Bend, Merritt surely sniffs an opportunity for a victory here. If Dennison can't hold on to this, Merritt will find any opportunity, any chance, any sniff of a first Winter Esports victory. He certainly is trying to push the pressure as much as possible, but Kendall's also there too. It is quite literally 3 for the lead now. Out of Surtees, now down Pilgrim's Drop for the last time. Kendall tries to get the toe off Merritt. Merritt has the toe on Dennison. No way through. Again, takes that slightly wider approach. He's literally following in the wheel tracks of the 14 machine. And that's the rear view. That's how large Thomas Merritt is looming as they come out of Westfield, down the hill, back up it again towards Sheen Curve. Time has hit 0, so we've now hit the completion of the race. A checker flag is out this time by. Only a couple of corners left for Merritt to try and get through. Remember, these two will now start alongside each other, provided it stays where it is. The 5th row of the grid from a partially reversed top 10 towards the right-hander at Fairways and McLaren for the last time. And despite the best advance of Thomas Merritt, who now has Matt Kendall to deal with on the run to the flag, is going to be win number 5 of the season for James Dennison. But he had lots of pressure to do it. Dennison wins race 2 of the night at Brands Hatch. Look for the perfect record in race number 3. Merritt just holds on for 2nd place ahead of Matt Kendall. But once again, the same top 3 as it was in race 1. Blackwell Chambers comes home in 4th place. Isaac Doble in 5th. Jack Noller 6th. Benji Douglas, Chris Etheridge, Joe Moss and John Pethick, who earns himself reverse grid pole for race number 3. Rest of the field comes streaking through. There was Pete Smith taking the flag in 13th spot. Keith Dalton, after his skirmishes mid-race, picks up 16th. The rest of the field will come through. And as usual, it's end of the race, so they all go spearing off every which way. I assure you, in real life, they don't do this in real life. It's purely because they can do it in the sim. They can get away with it. But wait. Mr. Lancombe's Paul Dunningham. He'll be impressed with that. 22nd for Paul Dunningham, keeping out of trouble. The classic VW man who's used to an Audi A3 rather than a BMW. So jump to Teutonic machinery, not quite the machinery that you'd be thinking of. So I go a few more. Rob Boston survives to take 26th. Good to see Rob taking his first dip into esports. He was a bit of a surprise name. I wasn't expecting him on the grid, but nice to see that Rob is taking a go at sim racing. I have to say, Rob Boston is one of those men in motorsport who, whichever kind of race car that he turns his hand to engineering, it usually is a quick one. I don't know how much experience he has running or developing any BMWs, but certainly plenty of GT and Mazda MX-5 machinery along the way means that he's certainly not shy of experience in motorsport. He's a pretty handy driver to boot too as well. It was nice to see an experienced racer and team boss joining the eSports ranks. And this will be a short gap, a 5-minute warm-up to let them set the grid for race number 3, so they'll be able to rejig the top 10. And again, put John Pethick on the front row of the grid on pole alongside Joe Moss. And this little warm-up will give them a chance to just, not necessarily adapt to any conditions, but it gives them a chance just to kind of get prepared and make sure the setup is where it should be. They all run fixed setups, so it'll be just how the car feels underneath them, getting used to it once again. Not everyone goes out for this warm-up session. It's just a chance for them to... It's the time for them to properly reset the grid and to put everyone in their place. The top 10 verse along the grid should be... It's all reset itself now anyway, but it should now be John Pethick on pole, Joe Moss alongside him. And John was in contention in the third race at Donington at one point early on. Joe Moss should be up there too in the Flat Cap Motorsport car. All eyes, of course, are going to be also on those two machines that will start back on the 5th row of the grid. Now, Matt Kendall, of course, you have to take into account, did start in 8th, did finish 3rd, so he will start 8th, ahead of both James Dennison and Thomas Merritt. So that could be a really interesting scenario. If Kendall can get a good start and pick his way through the first few cars and not allow Dennison to pass him and charge his way through, there's a real opportunity that Kendall can try and claw back all the points that he's lost from finishing 2 places behind Dennison in both of those races. There is Dennison taking full advantage of the warm-up session. To mention that, of course, the new BRSCC racing season is fast approaching. Registrations and entries are now open for all 2025 series and championships, so if you are someone who races in a BRSCC championship or series or is planning to this season and want to get yourself sorted, you can sort out your membership, sort out your registration and start your race entries on top of that, all on one place. That is racehub.brscc.co.uk. The first event of the season takes place in mid-March next month, the Silverstone GP circuit, the very same venue, purposely, where the Winter Esports Series finishes up. We wanted to try and tie it in with the beginning of the new real-world racing season. And so Silverstone GP is the season finale there. We have later in the season for eSport. The next round after this in a couple of weeks is another first for Winter Esports Championship for BRSCC. For the first time, we go to the twists and turns of the mighty Cadwell Park, the mini Nürburgring of the North, which was added in one of the last few updates of iRacing. It's tight, it's twisty, with some 30 plus BMWs tearing around there. That's certainly going to be quite an interesting spectacle indeed. The warm-up continues on. A chance to enjoy the sights and sounds of Brands Hatch with Ben Williams. You can just make out his profile picture there, the black and green MG Metro that he runs in the Hickford Construction MG Metro Cup. He'll be back again once again this year in BRSCC circles. That's again something we pointed out that's a really nice thing about this Winter Esports Series, that you get such a culmination of different drivers from BRSCC series and championships that might not regularly race against each other on the same grid. They might be frequent the same paddocks, but only stay within their own little championships and series areas. But it's a great chance for them to come together and actually build some friendships, build some bonds, and to also shake off any cobwebs and race rustiness that you might have had since the season ended, right back in October. So it'll be some 6, nearly 7 months for some drivers before they get back on the grid and start racing once again. They will be trying to keep themselves steady, and of course, if the pros can do it, so can those at club level. Benji Douglas, who I think was one of our new incoming Fiesta Juniors this year, so it's nice to see that he's getting in some proper practice. Might not be racing on the GP circuit, but certainly getting used to the vast majority of the Brands Hatch Indy circuit that he'll be using, although on his turn it'll be him turning right rather than left on that variant. Enjoying the GP layout nonetheless. Good to see him also in a different livery, because he was in the Dim 1 Motorsport colours, where he was being driver coached and tutored by Lee Brisson, regular in the MX5 Super Cup. He's now picked up his own two-tone black and grey BRD livery with a rather menacing kind of red BRD on the side, so that shows he means business. Here's Paul Dunningham on screen. And this circuit mainly being clockwise, a lot of stress gets put onto the left-hand tyres. There's only a handful of right-handers, left-handers, but it's even the right-handers that are struggling. Paul Dunningham here as he loops it around perfectly in the runoff area. Quickly escape back to the pits, only because there's only a matter of seconds left in the warm-up before we head into race number 3. And again, I remind you, this is a top 10 reversal of the result from race number 2. That means once they all shuffle into position and the session switches over, we'll have to see exactly who lines up where. So the session now complete. Timing screen and the system will now shuffle around the grid. And as it comes up on screen, this is what we're greeted with. So, John Pethick, after finishing 10th in race number 2, will start race number 3 here at Brands Hatch from pole position as expected. Alongside him on the front row will be Joe Moss for Flat Cap Racing. Then it's Chris Etheridge and Benji Douglas, followed by Jack Noller and Isaac Doble. And crucially, the two Clapham North teammates, Paul Blackwell Chambers and Matt Kendall, 7th and 8th, ahead of Thomas Merritt in 9th. Double race winner and championship leader James Dennison in at the bottom of the top 10. Luke Pullen starts 11th, with Tom Von Hemis in 12th on the 6th row, followed by Pete Smith, Daniel Crisp on row 7. Row 8 sees Ari Barker and Keith Dalton from Mark Blunt and Ben Williams. And Jensen and O'Neill going inside the top 20 alongside Carl Pilkington. It's the other photographer, James Roberts, just behind Carl in 21st place, with Paul Dunningham 22nd, with Lewis Turkington and Jonathan Berry completing the top 24. And further back in the field from 25th onwards, it's Josh Jackson, Rob Boston, Dan Gamble, Nathan Williams, Nick Ramsey-Goff and JP Zedis rounds off the top 30. The rest of the screen shows the rest of the grid. The lights are out, and race number 3 of the night is underway at Brands Hatch. And Joe Moss immediately covers off Chris Etheridge down towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. And John Pethick will lead them through. All safety and calm so far. In the background, James Dennison in 10th in purple and yellow, trying to keep out of trouble. He's on the outside of back. Kendall gets tipped around by Thomas Merritt. He gets sideways on the exit. Also, too, I think was one of the Clapham North cars. Was that Matt Kendall too? It was. So Matt Kendall also got into it too. So both of the top two in the championship. I think Thomas Merritt's gone off stage left. Yes, he has. At Graham Hill Bend, Thomas Merritt, the top 3 drivers, all coming to blows in look like relatively separate incidents on the first couple of corners. Joe Moss has now taken the lead from John Pethick. Really has made things dramatic. Thomas Merritt is down to 34th position with all to do on this first lap of the race. So Joe Moss then, from the front row of the grid, has taken the lead halfway through lap number 1. Pethick 2nd, Etheridge 3rd, Benji Douglas 4th, Jack Noller in 5th, Paul Blackwell Chambers is in 6th. It's Isaac Doble, Luke Pullen and Juan Hemias, and Matt Kendall crucially still ahead of James Dennison. He sits in 10th place. Snake makes its way out of Sheen Curve up towards Stirling's for the first time. There is Matt Kendall after the small sideways moment he had. Didn't quite see who tapped him sideways. You might get a view of it here on the replay. So up the hill, we're focusing on Matt Kendall. So it's side by side for the lead. Joe Moss goes through. Kendall's in the centre here. So Merritt taps Dennison, and it was possibly, was that Luke Pullen who tapped? Yeah, it was Luke Pullen that tapped Matt Kendall. They both carried on, and behind, I think it was Pete Smith that just got a little too close to the back of Thomas Merritt's car, who in turn was trying to go back around the outside of Dennison. Benji Douglas goes off the road and drops back down the outside of the top 10. So a couple of separate incidents, but the main 3 from tonight's iRacing have all come to blows at some point. Doble might be a benefactor. 6th position. Right there goes Luke Pullen. The replay. This is Matt Kendall's view. This is Luke Pullen's view. So this is what he can see. So he's now got James Dennison to his outside. Dennison now breaks himself. Both of them go either side of Merritt. Then Pullen gets into the side of Kendall. That then checks up on Hemias and the 3 cars behind. And it was 3 wide between the 2 Bromley Racing cars and Thomas Merritt. Merritt just swept in front of Pete Smith, who I don't think intended to make the contact. As a result, Merritt went spinning out onto the grass at Graham Hill Bend. The leaders, and Chris Etheridge has now found himself into 2nd place. So the 1992 BTCC Tribute Liveried machine is up into the runner-up spot ahead of John Pethick. For Kendall, he's now made up another place past Luke Pullen. He's up into 7th. Whereas Dennison is still 9th ahead of Monhemius. It is now Carl Pilkington battling Lewis Turkington for the last spot in the top 20. C2, the motorsport photographers enjoying themselves in the sim racing series. So now we see Luke Pullen here battling with James Dennison, and this is the last thing that Dennison needs. He's pulled himself alongside the Mazda MX-5 racer as they head towards Paddock Hill Bend. He's got the inside line, outbrakes Luke into turn 1. At Paddock, it is into 8th place for the championship leader. Now he's got to try and set off as quick as he can to get onto the tail of Matt Kendall, who in turn is now stacked up in this queue of cars, headed by Joe Moss. Moss in the lead then. The Ridge, Pethick, Noller, Blackwell Chambers, Doble, Kendall. Now Dennison in 8th. Then it's Pullen and Monhemis in the top 10, with Ari Barker just latching onto the rear of this battle to get a top 11 for positions. All Chambers under threat from Jack Noller. In fact, Noller, I think, was actually losing a place, and Noller now has the inside run down Pilgrim's Drop. Isaac Doble thinking about making it 3 wide. Boxes himself in behind the 2 cars in front as they turn to the right-hander. Blackwood Chambers didn't realise Noller was still far alongside, had to turn out of it, and that gives Doble the free pass for 5th position, or so he thinks. Blackwood Chambers battles back on the outside line and says, if you want to get past me, try and do it a long way. Doble says, you've opened the door for me, so I'm just going to go through every day. Blackwood Chambers now has to not only try and re-attack Doble, but also defend from his teammate onto the rear bumper. That's how close he is. 2 Clapham North cars find each other again. Matt Kendall certainly making his point. I'm ahead of you in the points. I want to come through. And also you can see right behind him, there's his main motivator. That is James Dennison, locked onto the rear bumper of his main points rival. Swing out of Clark Curve back onto the pit straight. 7 of them together. In fact. Near the ridge, just having a little look up the inside to try and peek up past Os for P1. They are scrapping in front. I can see off the corner right up ahead of them. It is a battle for the lead because Etheridge is challenging Omos. Run out wide as we look at the right front hanging out to the side of James Dennison's car. There's our leaders come out of Graham Hill Bend. And you can see Joe Moss is not comfortable on the racing line. He has to go defensive because Etheridge will go for it, makes a dive, has an attempt looking to get past at Surtees. Moss had him covered well. Now the sprint down Pilgrim's Drop towards Hawthorns. Sense that one of these 8 cars is going to make some kind of a move sometime soon because they're all stacked together. This is the beauty of the top 10 reverse grid race, because you get cars a little bit out of position and it just invites a little bit more battling, a little bit more jostling for position. Cars having to fight their way through from deeper in the field. Look at all 8 cars in that top 8 quite literally locked together in combat. Not quite necessarily an 8 BMWs, it's a 32-wheel drive BMW altogether. Just behind them you can see Luke Pullen in 9th and Tom Monhemius in 10th, who is just trying to shake off Ari Barker to hold on to that last spot in the top 10. This is super close stuff here at the front of the field. This is what the North Winter eSports Series is all about. This battling in these BMWs, they've had rave reviews ever since they joined. They really are producing fantastic racing. Case in point, Noller was going up the inside of Pethick for 3rd place, but I think John held his line and his own for the time being, exiting Paddock at the bottom of the hill, back towards the top. Noller has track position and through he goes. Crucially, Blackwell Chambers also finds his way past Doble, and it might just invite Kendall to get past, but if he holds his line on the inside of Druids, that might also invite Dennison to try and get through. Action stations all the way, and Doble, do you have to give the position? I think he does. He's left the door open. Matt Kendall seizes the opportunity. Doble tries to fight it out around the outside. Doesn't have the grip or momentum. Can't get the punch off the corner. And because of that, he's also going to lose another position, because here comes James Dennison. He's focused right on the rear end of Kendall's car. But is he going to make the pass stick? Doble is right there, holding his line. Dennison has no choice but to hold the outside. Just touches the grass a little. Pullen might fancy his chances here to squeeze past 2. All this is benefiting Matt Kendall, because if he can start chasing after Pethick, it's creating a gap here, and the longer that Doble frustrates Dennison, the shorter time he has to get through. Holds the outside line through Sheen Curve. That'll give him the inside for Sterlings. Can he hold on to it? That was brave stuff from James Dennison. Held the outside through Sheen Curve that you don't normally do. found the grip, had the confidence, and gets himself up into position. That's now him into 7th place at the expense of Isaac Doble. You can't help but applaud that. That was a very fine piece of driving from the championship leader. There's a reason why he tops the points. It's pretty exceptional. Side by side just in front from the leader. Saw Etheridge going down the outside and Joe Moss into paddock hill bend. That could be a change. They've stayed in position, but Etheridge is certainly putting the pressure on. You see there, look, I think that's Nola going for 2nd place. It is. Etheridge has to run wide through Druids. Nola says thank you very much, and up into the runner-up spot he goes. And Blackpool Chambers is going with them now. Kendall's dropped back by, no, he's still there in the back of this 6-pack for the podium places. Kendall wants 5th place towards 30s. Side by side for 2nd and for 5th. Not quite sure where to look. Kendall has made the pass stick. Up into the top 5 goes Kendall. And 2nd in points coming to the weekend. Now it's wheel to wheel between Etheridge and Nola. They're almost going to touch wing mirrors on the sprint down Pilgrim's Drop towards Hawthorns. Blackwell Chambers has got a perfect seat here. We ride on board. Perfect timing. He might fancy 3rd place here as Etheridge is all out of shape through Hawthorns. Does he leave the door open in towards Westfield? Kind of, but Blackwell Chambers wasn't far enough alongside. He will be now, though, because Etheridge runs wide over the gravel, and it opens the floodgates. As here comes Kendall, and also the inside looks John Pethick. Both of the Clapham North cars have got through into 3rd and 4th respectively, so another place gained. Kendall, look who's trying to charge up the field also. He's Dennison. He's made that pass on Doble a lap ago. The outside of Sheen Curve. That next target has to be John Pethick. He's practically locked onto the rear bumper of the 150 machine. Clark Curve again. He knows he's got to try and get past both Pethick and Etheridge as quick as he can, because in front of him, Kendall is just going to keep on driving off in front. The 2 Clapham North cars, I don't think will switch places voluntarily. A certain Kendall, even though this is his teammate, very much like to get past him. There was contact there between Dennison and Pethick. He spins right into the path of Luke Pullen. It causes pandemonium behind because Harry Barker's involved. Also, I think it was Benji Douglas, I think, or a laps car in fact was involved in that. Maybe Ben Williams. Now we've got, that is Pullen running wide. Pethick has no front bumper. I'm afraid that was all started in some cases by the championship leader. Of course, it's not for me to decide. It's down for the stewards to look at that post race. But Pethick now surviving sans a complete front end on that car. With one in 9th place. There is Dennison and P6. It's now got a bit of a gap to the 5 cars in front, who have all stacked up between each other. It's as close as you like at the front. It's now Moss, Nola, Blackwell Chambers, Kendall and Etheridge. That's the top 5. Dennison now has some clear air, so he can try and close in. He's going to be running out of time and options as Etheridge looks up the inside. That's for 4th place. For 5th, in fact, that's Etheridge. And that's Kendall off the road. I think there was contact between Etheridge and Kendall. I spoke too soon, so that's a free pass for Dennison. Matt Kendall. It looked like there was potential contact between Etheridge and Kendall in towards Sterling's. Get a replay very shortly of that. It now frees up. Moss in the lead, Jack Noller in 2nd place under threat from Blackwell Chambers, and now looking for 4th, James Dennison up the inside into paddock, and despite Etheridge stubbornly holding on to the place, he now runs wide on the exit over the gravel, and Dennison is not hanging around here. Towards Druids. Now then, let's see what happened looking further back. So in towards Sheenker, this is Matt Kendall's perspective. He's got Etheridge on his tail. Etheridge looks up the inside into Sterling's. Let's see what happens here. It might be a bit of netcode there, I think, because I don't think Etheridge was purposely trying to make contact there. It simply might just be 2 cars getting to the wrong place at the wrong time, but there might have been a bit of netcode in that, but we'll let the stewards have a look at it afterwards. So, Kendall, who has dropped down to 12th position, certainly will be advantaged Dennison by the end of tonight. We're on to the last, I think maybe penultimate lap, with maybe possibly 2 laps to go, if not just the 1. Times have also been the 133s, 134s. In terms of race pace for the fastest. I have a replay here also what happened with Luke Pullen before as well. This is him exiting Graham Hill Bed. I think the incident happened a little bit further back on the exit of Druids after Dennison made the contact. Did run wide, here it is. So in the initial contact off I saw was Dennison who tagged Pethick. As Pethick spun into the path of Pullen, he really had nowhere to go. And Pullen kind of outbraked himself, ran over the grass on the exit. Everyone else behind is trying to sort themselves out. Unfortunately, that's how it worked. Now there's the initial contact. Dennison just tags Pethick, Down he goes. Doble was so lucky to get away with a small tag there, but he carried on. And I think he took some damage because he was crabbing on his way down towards Graham then. So I think Doble was also involved in that. Meanwhile, for the lead, it's all kicked off in front. It's now 4 for the lead between Moss, Blackwell, Chambers, Nolla and Dennison. Rich is back in here too in 5th place. They're now on to the second to last laps. It's going to be about roughly, 2 laps to go in this one. Well, Chambers, who won the 3rd race at Navarra, that was the reverse grid race too. I have to say kudos to Joe Moss in the Flat Cat Motorsport team. He has held firm ever since he took the lead at Druids on lap number 1. They come out of Surtees. This is certainly holding steadfast as they come down the hill towards Hawthorns once again. Nolla looking strong in 2nd place. Blackwell Chambers will be happy with 3rd on the podium, I'm sure. This has been certainly one of the most action-packed races of the season so far. The top 5 all together. A couple of other drivers to shout out. Tom Bonhemius has very quietly risen up to 6th position, so good effort from Tom. He qualified so low down earlier on this evening. 7th for Nathan Williams. 8th for John Pethick, who's continued despite the contact from Dennison before, racing without a front bumper. 9th is now Kendall, who's recovered 3 spots after a couple of cars have incidents. I think recently it's been Isaac Doble. In fact, there he is. So Isaac Doble, he did have some damage I saw in that replay, which had his car crabbing a little bit after the contact. Look here just recently at what happened. There's Doble struggling along with damaged suspension on that car. Just turns into Westfield. The car getting loose, still getting loose, and off he goes. Even though Benji Douglas was there, I think he was pretty helpless because Doble's car was already out of shape thanks to the damage. I don't think there was anyone to blame for that one. Right, final lap of the race, and it is 5 for the lead. Any one of these 5 could still win it, but the question's got to be, who's going to come across the line first? Listen looks up the inside of Blackwell Chambers for 3rd, edges him out wide and takes the position. Almost, because they're still wheel-to-wheel towards Surtees. Blackwell Chambers does fancy going down the outside here. You can make it stick if you've got enough grip. He's thinking about it, and Moss actually runs wide, and through into the lead goes John Nolla, and into the barriers goes Joe Moss. Didn't quite catch what happened. I don't know if there was contact or not, but Joe Moss, who'd led for so long, off into the barriers, and that's his race done, I'm afraid. But he's out of contention. It's 4th left. Might have to look at that possibly at the end of the race after it finishes, because it's such a close finish. We'll have to wait for the replay afterwards. Through Westfield for the final time. Jack Nolla then, earning his 6th race of the season, is about to possibly take his 1st win of the year. Blackwell Chambers 2nd, Etheridge 3rd, and Dennison into 4th now. That will certainly extend his lead in the championship. It's now Monhemius up to 5th. Nathan Williams is now in 6th. Pethick Moss in 8th ahead of Kendall. Harry Barker in the top 10. Blackwell Chambers looking to try and attack in towards Clearways. Can't find a way through. What's been a very entertaining, energetic final race. A wiggle of the tail from Blackwell Chambers. You might try to get him on the sprint to the flag, but it's not going to work. Checker flag in the air, and Jack Nolla takes victory in race number 3 of the evening in the Clapham North BRSCC Winter eSports Series at Brands Hatch. A very, very frantic final couple of laps. The driver who might feel a little bit aggrieved is that man, Joe Moss, who was on the cusp of that 1st victory. Unfortunately, something happened towards the end. Now, if we can get a replay of that, I want to see what happened, because the initial pass from Nolla, again, I didn't see if there was any contact or not. I'm going to presume there wasn't. It's the secondary part of that sequence that saw Moss off into the barriers. We'll let the pictures tell the story as and when we can get it. Got some time here, I think. Oh, right, let's take a look then and look back at what happened. This is now going into... This is the lead of the race going into the final lap. This is Moss leading. Etheridge in 2nd place. This is Pethick still in 3rd. This is maybe a bit further back, in fact. You might have to possibly pass forward on that one. I'll direct just having this go through. So this is further back in the race when they were battling for position, because Doble's still in there, Pethick's still in there. Wayne Moss is how he held on for quite a while in the most wanted tribute livery machine. This is how close it really was. Now let's see if we can get the right replay here. Right, here we go. Yes, so the initial, I think, tap there, I think possibly from Nolla, and the secondary part, it's difficult to say at that angle because Dennison was right behind him. I don't want to automatically suggest that he was involved in it. Let's have a look. Here's number 4 from Dennison. Was there contact? Oh, there was. So Dennison involved in 2 incidents. Now, I don't know if that's going to result in any penalties or afters on that one, but here's the perspective from Dennison once again from the aerial view. So Moss in front of him. and that's a slam dunk, I'm afraid. Dennison into the back of Moss, into the barriers goes Joe, and we'll wait and see what the stewards make of that one. So, after what was a very frantic and fast few races tonight, race number 3 goes the way of Jack Noller for Lukey P's eSports team of Dreams and Wonders. Certainly was Dreams and Wonders for him. He wins by about a tenth and a half on Will Blackwell-Chambers. And Chris Etheridge, what a result for him, taking 3rd place. If we can talk to him, that would be magnificent. 4th for James Dennison, but he might have 1 or 2 trips to the stewards after the race to explain a couple of his incidents. Tom Monhemius, a very excellent 5th, ahead of Nathan Williams in 6th. John Pethick 7th from Joe Moss in 8th. Matt Kendall, after he went off the road after a potential incident with Chris Etheridge, he finishes up 9th, and Harry Barker rounds out the top 10. Then Benji Douglas, Keith Dalton, Mark Blunt, Lewis Turkington in 14th. Good effort from Lewis. And then Carl Pilkington in the top 15. Followed by Ben Williams, Joshua Jackson and Pete Smith. And then 19th backwards, we see Jamie Peters Ennis, Dan Gamble, Rob Boston 21st, good for him. Isaac Doble, after his damage and spin up at Westfield, goes across the line in 22nd, ahead of James Roberts. Then Dan Crisp, Aaron Beattie, Nick Ramsey Goff after his troubles early on. Then Luke Pullen, and who had his troubles, Thomas Merritt, who was in contention till he went off the road. Then Paul Dunningham, Anthony Lindley, Bobby Holmes, Jensen Engel going. And we also lost on top of that Neil Chisnall, Jonathan Berry, Lee Britton and Max Horler. So an eventful 3rd race to say the least, and very much a lot of people who will be thinking about what's happening next time by. We've got a few people who we can have a chat to, in fact 3 of our main contenders. Let's pull in the man who finished on the top of the table in race number 3. Let's have a chat to Jack Noller, who had a very impressive run in the 3rd race to pick up his first victory of the season. Jack, only 6 races and already your first victory in the series, but that one it was like a pretty energetic time out on track, particularly in the closing stages.
Yeah, that was hard work. It's not easy to overtake round Brands Hatch because everything's in the same direction, basically. It was a lot of managing pace, and every time I got past one, okay, yes, I got a little gap to the guys behind. Our wheels got past, and now the pace was really slow. It was really, but that's what happens when you're racing for the lead. You don't need to go fast. You just need to stay on track. So the guys really raced hard and fair. We did the test race a couple of days ago, and we practiced overtaking and stuff like that. So the move for the lead, I tried a couple of times on Nathan in race 1, so I knew where to hit the ABS and when not to hit the ABS. And I knew he was braking especially early there, every single lap. So last lap, give it a go, and followed the curb all the way around the inside, got far enough alongside, then managed just to be like, right, I'm here, that's it, and that's managed to get the run on the way out. Gutting for Joe though, because James had that he didn't even get on the podium after a race like that.
Yeah, we did, so there might be a couple of trips to the stewards' office, I think, for James after the evening that he had tonight. Obviously, you're used to racing, I think, in last time out in this series in the MX-5s last season. You made your first appearance in the BMW back at Donington. How have you found the comparison? Of course, they're 2 quite different cars, both being rear-wheel drive. This is a fast saloon compared to a small sports car. But how have you found the difference in this car, and how much are you enjoying it compared to the races that you've done in the Mazda in the past?
Yeah, I've done all the season so far with this, but it's definitely it's a change from the Mazda. The Mazda was, as Will probably said before, like the slipstream is so powerful in game, even in game, especially like real life and in game there. So it means that everyone's always close. Here, pace matters a bit more, but the big thing is you can't overdrive the entries on these at all. It's from what I'm used to racing in real life and what I'm used to racing in other esports games. I don't drive iRacing that much. I only really drive it for these series. You just cannot overdrive the entry at all. It's like you're just babying the car on the way into the corner. But it means the racing is close, and sometimes it means the racing has to be aggressive to get past, but then it's less chaotic because you haven't got 20 cars fighting for the win necessarily because of slipstream. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other of the racing, but I am really enjoying it because I'm taking it a bit more seriously this time. But yeah, so yeah, it's been a good couple of rounds. Shame I had to miss the first round due to Autosport, but really happy to get the win today. Obviously a bit courtesy of reverse grid, but you've got to be there to take the opportunities.
when you can take it any way you can. And speaking of a first race win, you were saying about being aggressive and fast where you can. The next circuit coming up, just take your chances. Of course, it's Cadwell Park, very twisty, very tight. First time we run in this series. In these cars, with about 30 of them, I mean, what are you anticipating is going to happen at Cadwell Park? And in terms of, it's going to be close naturally, being such a naturally tight and winding circuit. But how much is that going to play a factor into what on the outcome, particularly when it comes to overtaking and defending position? Because passing opportunities on that circuit, as you know from racing in real world, they're few and far between. If you can make a pass there, it's one that you have to make worthwhile.
I think you're going to see a lot of frustrated people, and it's going to, especially the reverse grid, you're probably going to see one of the top 3 on the reverse grid take the win. Whether you'll see people playing the game and sandbagging race 2 to try and get a reverse grid pole or front row, I don't know. Depends how seriously everyone's going to take it, and especially as the championship's hotting up now. Whether anything happens with Matt penalty or not, James penalty or not, whatever happens there, they're both close in the championship. And with Cadwell, it's going to be qualifying's king, and then you're probably going to have a high-profile crash at some point, at least in race 1 and 2, and then definitely in race 3, because it's, as much as really, really close to real life, it's not real life, and some people might take that risk they wouldn't quite take in real life, just because most you can do is break your thumb if you've got a very big direct drive wheel, but if not, it just hands off and away you go. Hopefully we'll have some clean racing. I imagine there's going to be a lot of bumper to bumper, maybe a few bump and runs, but yeah, I don't think we'll see much overtaking on merit without a mistake from someone.
Who'd have thought it? Racing drivers taking it seriously? Surely not. I wouldn't believe that for a second. Jack, congratulations. Great racing tonight. Well done on the victory. And fingers crossed if it all plays out that way, that you get a similar result at Cadwell Park. But until then, good effort, and we'll see you then.
Thank you very much.
Stuff. So that was Jack Noller, race 3 winner from deep in the field. Let's bring in the man who took the victories in the first 2 races, James Dennison, championship leader, after a very strong performance once again, adding to his tally for 2024. To bring him into the interview, you can see him on screen there in yellow and purple. And let's have a chat with James now. James, another 2 victories to add to the tally. Let's talk about those 2 first of all before we get to race 3. 2 more races where you had the lead but you weren't able to pull away from the cars in front, because first Matt and then Thomas in particular really pressed you hard all the way to the end on both occasions.
Yeah, the race 1 and 2, I think race 1 I was not feeling massively comfortable with the car. It was only towards the end when I was starting to get my head around it, because the track felt like it was a bit different to qualifying, where I was quite happy. But yeah, to be fair to Thomas Merritt, he was right behind me, doing a great job. So yeah, pressuring me all the way in race 1, and then yeah, race 2 I felt like a lot more in control. And then I think I was coming up on a back marker and sort of just, I think, snapped out of the rhythm a bit. And then for the next couple of laps, I was a little bit ragged. But yeah, 2 good wins, so can't complain.
No complaints for races 1 and 2. Then we get to race 3, where you had to start back in 10th on the grid, and that's where really all the action was from start to finish. A couple of moments that you were involved in, not for us to speculate, we'll leave it to the stewards if they have anything to say about it, but just talk us through what happened in that race from your point of view and how you saw over the flashpoints that you were involved in terms of how it played out in front of you.
Yeah, it was a bit of a up and down race. I think the pace was good and it was a bit easier to overtake than anticipated, but yeah, I got into one at Druids with poor John Pethick, who I just went for a lunge up the inside and it just didn't work out, and I spun him around, but I think he still finished okay, so it wasn't until race ending, but yeah, that wasn't great. And then later on in the race, I was battling with Will, and then there was a car on the right. I think it was Joe Moss, and just came up the hill and saw him there going pretty slowly, and then steered to the left, but it wasn't enough, unfortunately. So got into a collision with him. So I got quite a few incident points in that. But yeah, I mean, 4th place, it felt lower than that. But yeah, it was a very, very eventful race. But yeah, congrats to Jack as well, because I think that must be his first. That's his first win this year as well. So yeah, congrats to Jack.
Yeah, definitely first win of the season for him as well. Still a solid 4th place and 2 wins. That should and you finished all 3 times ahead of Matt too. So that'll extend your lead going towards Cadwell Park. Tight and twisty. First time that we in this series that we've gone to Cadwell Park, it being a newer circuit on the iRacing system. What are you anticipating, particularly as now the man who's going to be still leading the points going towards Cadwell? What are you anticipating from a circuit like it that's tight, twisty, and going to have some 30-plus BMWs, consider we get that many, go around it for 3 15-minute races? It's going to be. Do you think it's going to be frantic? Is it going to be well behaved? How do you see those 3 races playing out from your point of view?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting at Cadwell Park. One, because it's so tight and it's hard to overtake in Mazda MX-5s around there. These things are a bit bigger, so yeah, I anticipate it being very, very tight, and the overtaking be down to a minimum. Also, currently, I'm not able to do it, so that might throw the cat amongst the pigeons as well. So I might have to use my drop rounds for that. In fact, I will have to use my drop rounds, but yeah, I think I think it'll be very close, be very tight. I'll watch it if I can, but yeah, best of luck to everyone racing there.
Thank goodness drop scores, I think, is the bombshell to leave on that part.
Yeah, I couldn't do that in real life.
No, that's very true. But again, thank goodness for drop scores on that side. But whether you make it or not, fingers crossed, we do see you out. I'm certain we'll see you at least for the season finale when you'll have a title to battle with. But even so, a good effort. 2 wins in the 4th place to extend your points lead. It might mean you've got all to do at the final results than if you aren't able to make Cadwell Park. But nonetheless, some good results, and hopefully puts you in good stead for when you do return for the final, hopefully. All being well, good racing tonight, and fingers crossed you're in a good position still when we get to the Silverstone finale. But until then, good effort, and we'll see you then.
Yeah, no, cheers. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Stuff. So James Dennison, who by the sounds of it might not be with us for race number 3, but we'll see how the racing turns out next time out at Cadwell Park. I think our last interview we'll do is the man who has been chasing him in the championship all night and had to pick up a couple of had a couple of moments throughout the evening, in particular in that last race that picked him up 4th in the end as well for result. No, 9th in fact, but we'll have a chat with him as Matt Kendall. Let's bring Matt in and have a chat, see how he found his night on the Brands Hatch GP circuit in the Clapham North machine. Matt, looking at your evening, it was probably a case of what ifs. You were very much in the hunt for victory, very much in the hunt for podium finishes, and then just 1 or 2 mishaps or incidents that kind of sport it a little bit for you. Just talk us through your night of racing out there.
Sorry, you don't have Matt.
Oh, we have Carl Pilkington. Well, let's talk to Carl, in fact, because he will be a bit further down the order. Let's have a chat to Carl anyway. Carl, of course, you've been in the C series since the beginning. Talk us through your night. Interesting, you got a little bit down in the midfield. So, how were the adventures down in the mid pack with some of the other drivers that are around your pace level down there? How was it down there?
Well, I think it's a completely different race. Everyone's a lot closer together. You really do have to be looking everywhere, really. Race 1 wasn't the best for me. I just had a racing incident and ended up DNFing on lap 1. But race 2 started at in 34th and then ended up in 20th and then 20th up to 15th. So yeah, ups and downs tonight.
Steady progress nonetheless, having started that far back from qualifying and already finishing up in the top half. So are you finding more and more confidence in this car pretty much with every lap and every race you're completing?
Yeah, I mean, the car, every time you come to drive it, the car always feels slightly different. I'm also starting to getting used to the people that I'm racing with. I'm starting to learn how they drive, starting to predict how they're going to drive, and using some of their disadvantages to my advantage, you could say.
Excellent. And in terms of going forwards now for Cadwell Park, I mean, a couple of the drivers you spoke to already think it's going to be quite a challenge given how narrow and how twisty it's going to be and with the amount of cars we potentially could have on the grid too. Someone who is making their way up and down through the mid-pack in terms of pace, how do you anticipate that weekend's going to play out? Do you think it's going to be incredibly congested midfield that you're going to have to try and pick your way through? And do you think it'll be a case of just taking advantage of keeping your nose clean when others might have a rough day or two?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just, like you say, keeping your nose clean, waiting for other people to make tiny mistakes that you can capitalise on, really. It's going to be extremely congested, especially with Cadwell being such a narrow and windy track, especially up the mountain. But overall, it should be a great race.
Excellent. Well, fingers crossed for it. We'll see you then. Good effort tonight here at Brands Hatch to get yourself into the top 20 and make as much progress as you did. And all being well, we'll see you in a couple of weeks for Cadwell Park when hopefully it's more the same in terms of fortunes. But well done for tonight, and we'll see you then.
Thank you very much.
Stuff. I think we might, looking at the timer, might just run short of time to speak to Matt Kendall, I think, unfortunately. So we might have to possibly leave it there. But actually, we've got enough time. Let's bring him in. So let's bring Matt Kendall and have a chat to the man who's still chasing James Dennison in points, and have a word to see how he found his evening at the wheel of his Clapham North BMW. And bring you in to have a chat. Now, Matt, we were just saying as well, before we realised that we were talking to Carl rather than yourself, tonight was very much a night of what ifs in terms of you were up there with pace, up there battling for the lead, and then just a couple of incidents and mishaps seemed to just be a bit of a downfall for you tonight, but still a bit more damage limitation rather than scoring the points to try and beat James and co. Is that an accurate description of your night, or would you describe it differently?
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal. Race 1 was a goof. Got in the throttle, in the compression, traction control interfered. I got it's a very lucky eventuality with how it worked out. No damage, still finished third. And then race 3 was all netcode, so it's a racing deal at the end of the day.
Those are the points, nonetheless, that you're able to score, and of course James might potentially, not for us to speculate, but you might potentially have to have a word or two with the stewards about a couple of incidents that he was involved in, which may well end up benefiting in your favour, but that's not to think about that too much. But in terms of now going forwards into Cadwell Park, allegedly James is not going to be there, so is that really going to be a race for you where if James isn't able to make it, you've really got to try and maximise the results in order to try and close the gap and to put yourself in a position where, when it comes to Silverstone, that you two are going to have to put you in the best possible position to fight it out for the championship come the final round?
I mean, it's an ideal scenario in theory. I have pretty strong pace at Cadwell and iRacing in general, and I like the track, but it's going to be pretty chaotic with 40 cars, so I'm not going to go in with too many expectations. I'm just going to see how it goes on the night, because I don't think there's much that I can really guarantee happening there. Just, I may be able to put it on pole, I may be able to win race 1 and 2, but race 3 in that scenario being 10th would be not favourable, so we'll see.
Yeah, not the first driver that we've spoken to in this interview portion that have said it's going to be a very tricky night in terms of track position and just keeping it clean and tidy with so many cars on the track. So for you, it's simply just going to be, as you say, keep your nose clean, keep out of trouble, let everyone else have their own mistakes, and just try and stay out of anything that might potentially cost you points.
Yeah, don't make any more mistakes like tonight. I mean, I've always had issues at Brands, so I was kind of expecting something to go wrong. So Cadwell's not one of my bad tracks in general, so hopefully it'll go well, but yeah, can't really predict it. Just gonna have to try and score as many points as possible now.
I'm sure you will, and fingers crossed it goes slightly more fortunate than it was tonight, but still I think you scored as many points as you could to limit any damage that James took in terms of any points. All being well, we'll see in a couple of weeks for Cadwell Park, and should James not be there, hopefully it's your chance to capitalise on that, get the points that you need, and you can take it all the way down to the Silverstone finale. But until then, good effort for the points that you did score tonight. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, and fingers crossed for Cadwell.
Yes, yeah. Great.
Great stuff. So that concludes our post-race event interviews, and we're now going to head into a quick roundup of what happened. So victories once again for James Dennison, and a first for Jack Noller. Impressive stuff for him. And we now move on to already the 4th event out of 5. It's incredible how quick this series has already gone throughout the early part of 2025. But from Brands Hatch, we now move on to a new circuit for the series. It is Cadwell Park in Lincolnshire, known by many as the mini Nürburgring of the North for very good reason. It's incredibly tight, it's twisty, and with so many cars on track, it could well be an occasion that it's going to be very interesting indeed. Particularly if the championship leader James Dennison is not able to make it. That will mean that Matt Kendall and co are going to have to really capitalise on that to set up a rear grandstand finale at the Silverstone GP circuit at the beginning of March. That will be in a few weeks' time, but in a couple of weeks we will be at Cadwell for the 4th event of the season. But until then, thanks so much for everyone that's watched tonight. Thanks again to our partners at Clapham North MOT, plus also iRacing and our production partners at apexracing.tv. From Joshua Wilkie on production, and from myself, Scott Woodward, and all of us here at a virtual Brands Hatch, thank you very much for watching. If you want more information on anything that BRSCC does, head to their social media pages on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, YouTube and Instagram, and also be sure to subscribe to this channel too, and also the Apex Racing TV channel if you haven't already, if that's where you're watching, and head to the website brscc.co.uk for information on everything the club does, including the up-and-coming race calendar, which kicks off this year once again on the Silverstone GP circuit, which is where our season finale for the eSports series will be. But until then, from Josh, myself, Scott and all of us here, thank you for watching. Get subscribed and have a look and see what we do. And until next time in a couple of weeks, we will see you at Cadwell Park for event 4 of the season for the 2025 BRSCC Clapham North Winter eSports series. But until then, bye for now.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.